Hi, this is Linda and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm putting together my Project Life spread for the week of August 16th through August 25, 2024. And this was my first week back from vacation, and I'm using some supplies from Ali Edwards' Stories by the Month. Let's go ahead and dive in. I got back from vacation, and because I tend to do Project Life weekly, but when I'm traveling I do adjust it based on whatever's going on. So the weeks before, or the spreads before, were pretty much each city had its own spread, and I didn't go by calendar weeks. I went by just however many days I was there. So the previous spread ended on the day we flew home, which was a Friday, and I tend to run my spreads Monday through Sunday. So what I decided to do was just group that weekend when I got home with the next week here, so that I have probably about like 10 days in this spread, which is fine. I'm happy to get back on track with my album. But that means I had quite a bit going on here, which is okay. I just had a lot of extra photos here. So let me just arrange things out how I kind of wanted to start it, but I am going to pull over my supplies now. So this is just kind of my starting place for my photos. I will probably move them around. So I am using some of the supplies from Q1 Stories by the Month from Ali Edwards. If you missed it, I did a video here on my YouTube planning out some projects using the remainder of those supplies after I did one Project Life spread per month. And one of them was this Project Life spread using some like pinks and hearts. And originally it could have been like a February spread, but really it could be any time. So I have those supplies in a Ziploc here. I'm just gonna pull them out and kind of arrange things on the page and see how I want stuff to be. So I decided to do my title card using this vellum and this big heart. So I will have to make that. And then my main journaling, I'm gonna crop these down and put them in various spots. I also have this pink vellum for some additional journaling probably on there. And then I have a couple of these. So what I'm going to do, let's see, I have the idea to put some of these on a spot here. So I'll probably have that journaling there. And then the rest of these will be photos. So I'm gonna go ahead and put you guys on fast forward, cut these out, and figure out what's gonna go in each pocket and start getting this spread put together. What I did do in advance was I tried to write down what my 6 stories would be on here to kind of make sure I had things to pair with my photos. And then I had put December daily because that was in my planner, but then I realized the photos were actually the following week. So I'm not going to do that one, and I will think about what the 4th one or the 6th one will be as I'm cutting them out. Okay, so I had a lot of fun with this spread, and I was just super happy to be back to ordinary life documenting. I had so much fun on my vacation, and I had so much fun documenting my vacation in Project Life, and I'm excited to dive into a travel album soon. But in Project Life, I really just love the magic of the everyday documenting, so I was super happy to be back to that. I started by fussy cutting out all of these hearts, which I did put on high speed fast forward here, partially because some of it is not on the video, and partially because some of it just takes too long. It's hard to fussy cut things out right under the video. My point is I did take the time to cut all of these out. They're just hearts, so it's not that complicated. It doesn't take that long, but this spread did have quite a few pieces to it that were fairly tedious, time-consuming things. And I enjoy that process. I have a lot of fun working on Project Life when I can just sit and put on a show and just enjoy myself, whether I am cutting things out, doing repetitive stamping. I just have a lot of fun with the process. But I do share these videos sped up, so I just think it's important to kind of note how long they do actually take when I am doing things like that.
So I cut out all of those hearts and I'm laying everything out on the page. And the first step I tend to want to do in working on a Project Life spread is get kind of my base. So that would be just something for each pocket trimmed to the size of the pocket. So I have my hearts cut out where they're going to go, and now I'm cutting some background. This piece of vellum was in the add-on page. I think they're like, I can't remember what they're called, but there's like an add-on 6x8 paper pack each quarter this year from Ali Edwards. And so this is from the first quarter. And when I planned out using my supplies from that first quarter of Stories by the Month kit, I'm using things from the January kit, the February kit, the March kit, and that paper add-on pack. So that's where all of these supplies were coming from. And that black striped vellum piece was just so gorgeous. And I love the idea of using it as a bold background on a few of my pockets. So I pulled some white cardstock from my stash and I'm just trimming it down to be a base behind those vellum cards. So I had that vellum black bold striped pattern that I cropped to a 4x6 and 2 3x4s. And then I have that pink vellum, kind of like, I don't know if it's like a paint smear or something like that, that I also want to back with white cardstock. So I'm just going to use a little bit of rolling adhesive to adhere this vellum onto these white pieces of cardstock. And ideally it will go behind, the adhesive will be behind whatever I'm gluing on top of it. So I don't have to worry about it shining through. So my plan for this spread and my initial plan, which you can see more in that Q1 Stories by the Month planning video, is to use these hearts as a jumping off point to tell 6 stories from this week. And just kind of use that bold black and white and then the pinks from the hearts as my main color scheme from the week. So I'm just finding places to kind of leave those hearts on the spread. They're kind of big, so putting them on a 3x4 photo just wasn't manageable, but I was able to find space for them on 4x6 photos, being a little bit creative. So this photo is of me with my daughter's mirror, which was the biggest thing that we moved into her new apartment because her apartment is furnished. So she didn't take much furniture with her, but she did want her huge mirror. So I just took a selfie in the mirror when it was in the driveway, and it had a lot of white space that I could put a heart on. This was a screenshot of a Zoom call with some friends. And what I did was I just kind of added some additional black in Photoshop on the background just to make sure there was enough space to add the heart. And then the final 4x6 there, which I haven't gotten to yet in the video, is a grid that's a layered template that I created in Photoshop to add some photos of my daughter's new apartment once she had it set up. And I left one of the corners squares blank so that I would have space to put the heart. These last 2 hearts here, I'm gluing onto one of the 3x4 background pieces of paper, and I'm just going to add some journaling on them that kind of goes with the photos nearby. At this point, I haven't yet figured out what stories are going to go on each of these hearts, or really what stories I want to tell for the week, but I am just working on adhering everything down and getting a base in each of the pockets like I talked about earlier in this video, because that's really kind of my first step once I'm at my desk and have my photos cropped out, is to get a base into each of my pockets. Now I'm going to work on those stories. So I have my sticky note, and if you've seen how I set up my albums, I have a sticky note at the beginning of each weekly spread that holds the dates, and I tend to write down what kit I'm going to use on it as well. Sometimes I don't write anything else on it. And part of this is it's a remnant of my old process where I used to put like bullet points on each of these of the stories I wanted to tell from the week. But that was kind of redundant because I was pulling them from my Hobonichi Cousins spread, my weekly spread where I put all of those notes. And before that, the Day One app. And I found that it's easier just to reference those direct sources while working on my spread, so I didn't need to copy them onto the sticky note and then copy it onto the spread, if that makes sense. So often I leave these sticky notes blank, but I do have them there as like a scratch paper, and so I use them frequently for stories where like I'm trying to come up with like 6 stories to go on those hearts. So what I'm doing here, and you can see I'm crossing stuff out and moving stuff around, is I was just coming up with what story was going to go on which spot. So I have the 6 hearts, and then I also have this vellum 3x4 card here that I want to add some journaling on. This week I was super sick, which was a theme throughout the week. And I talk about that in some of my other videos about sometimes grouping stories by theme. So that's what I'm doing on this card is I'm going to write all of the stories related to me being sick on this one card. So they are not necessarily something that happened on Monday or Tuesday or even one specific story, but it's a collection of stories that have to do around the specific theme. So I'm stamping out my title using one of the Alphas Are Awesome stamps from Allie Edwards and Stays on ink and just stamping the word sick at the top just to kind of give an overview of what this card is going to be about. Now, this card is on vellum, so I had to figure out what I could use to write on vellum. I had originally thought I might want to type some stuff up and print it out on sticker paper, a clear sticker paper to put on here, which works really well for typing on vellum, but I didn't feel at this point like going on my computer. I was enjoying kind of just crafting at my desk and wanted to figure something out that would work with a pen. So I'm just trying out multiple pens from my stash on that scrap of the black and white striped vellum. And a lot of pens like kind of work, or you have to give them a long time to wait for them to dry. You can see me trying to run my finger over it. And what I end up settling on is the Tombow Funazuki hard tip pen. And that is a brush tip. So it is really designed for brush lettering, but you can do printing with it if you hold it correctly. And it takes a little bit of practice because you can't put a lot of pressure on it, but it does come out looking pretty cute in the end. There's also this Sharpie, the thin Sharpie, which does work very well on vellum, but I have found that using Sharpies in my scrapbook do not last. They start to fade. They are not archival. And although I am not super concerned with making sure everything I use is archival, because I scrapbook for the process, and while I do want the memories to last, like they don't need to last forever. I'm not one of those people who thinks I'm going to pass these down. If my daughter wants to throw them away when I'm gone, that's totally fine. But anyways, I didn't want to use the Sharpies, and I don't use Sharpies in my album anymore because they don't last. Not only do they not last long term, but they tend to fade in like 6 months or so. So they're really just not a good option. So here you can see me using that Tombow Funazuki pen to do some journaling. Now back to what I was saying about the themed journaling. Here I'm just writing all of the stories from the week that have to do with being sick. So first it was just the overview of me being sick and how that was, after travel, and then just trying to look at it from a positive lens. So being thankful to have the time at home to rest. I just kind of said what I was filling my time with. My boyfriend made some matzo ball soup, which is that picture up in the top right-hand corner of the spread. So I made a note of that. And then my boss let me telecommute a little bit extra while I was recovering. I recently got a new boss, and her views on telecommuting while you're sick are way more friendly than my previous boss. And I'm very happy about that. So I just journaled about that there as well. I moved on to my title card here. I just did some rolling date stamps on that heart, which was one of the die cuts that I had designated to use with the spread, but I felt like there was some extra space there. So I wanted to include some chipboard, and I went into my stash of chipboard, which is in my top drawer directly under this desk where I work. And I'm pulling out various pieces to try to use on this spread. I do have a video on my channel sharing how I organize my chipboard in that drawer, and I love it and it is super useful, but I think I'm kind of outgrowing the system, and I want a system where I'm able to pull the organizer up on my desk. A lot of the trays in there are not removable, and because I film my videos, I feel like it would be more beneficial if I could shuffle through things on my desk where you could see it as opposed to in that drawer. So when I redo my craft room, which I have talked about in some other videos that I'm going to be doing in early 2025, one of the things I want to redo is my chipboard organization. And I'm just spending some time right now kind of thinking about how I want to reorganize my craft room and some of my supplies, and really focusing on like how I use things and how they would be most accessible for me. Anyways, back to the spread. So now I have my stories for each of these six hearts. And what I decided to do is use my favorite alpha stamp here, which I got on Amazon and I have linked in the description box down below, to stamp out a little bit of a title for each one of these hearts. And then I'm going to do some journaling on them. So the 6 stories that I came up with were the first one, just being home from vacation and just kind of getting back into routine. The second one was moving Summer, which is my daughter. We moved her into her new apartment 2 days after we got home from vacation, which was a huge kind of like shift and not the best timing. I mean, it worked out. I'm happy she didn't have to move while we were gone, which was something I was a little worried about initially, but it was kind of a quick turnaround, especially with me being sick, but it also helped us kind of settle back into our new routine after she was moving and she was going back to college. Then let's see, the third one is that craft Zoom where I got on with my friends, which is something that we try to do weekly and they do weekly and I often don't make time for. So I was very proud of myself for making time for it this week. And I wanted to make a note of that. So I try to make time for it more in the future. And then I did Pumpkin because I was happy to be home with him. My new glasses, which I picked up this week. And then finally, I did Summer's apartment, which is related to the story about moving her. But these were just some pictures of her apartment, how she had it set up a couple days after we moved her in. When we moved her in, we just kind of dropped off all of her stuff with her and like didn't help her set everything up. For those of you who don't know, she is a sophomore in college, but she goes to college locally. So her apartment is not that far from our house. So we are able to go back and visit her or help her set stuff up, like hang pictures on the wall and stuff. And we had decided, partially because we just got back from a long vacation and I was sick, and just with the timing of everything and how it would work out, we thought it would make the most sense to just deliver her stuff on her moving day and give her some time to kind of get settled and decide where she wanted stuff hung. And then we would go back and do that later. So these are the photos she sent once she had some time to kind of settle in and get everything set up. And those are the ones that are on that grid that I shared. Now I'm going back to do the journaling. So after I did all of my stamping, I'm going back to add a few words on each of these hearts. And like you can see, there's just not that much space to add journaling, but it's just a quick little story for each one. I did struggle a little bit to come up with 6 specific stories to highlight, but I think it worked out, and I'm really happy with how these came together and how they fit on the spread, and with this jumping off point for stories for Project Life. Sometimes it's nice to have something like these hearts where you have just the jumping off point to say, okay, come up with 6 stories from the week to highlight. And if you struggle with Project Life, that is a great way to kind of lay out your spread, because you don't need that many stories. You don't need a different story for every day. You don't need to document everything that happened. You can just do 6 stories to highlight the week. So I finished all of my journaling, and then I decided I needed a few more embellishments. And this is really something I've been trying to do this year, but in addition to using whatever kit or products I had planned for the spread, I'm liking the opportunity to dive back into my stash and pull some other pieces into the spread as well. So I went into my word phrase strip stash and pulled over 3 sheets that were colors that coordinated with this spread. So I pulled over a white sheet, a gray sheet, and a pink sheet. And then I am doing some stacked words on a couple of the photos. I think I picked 3. So I tend to do repeated embellishment clusters, and I try to do it on maybe like 3 photos throughout a spread. Not every single photo is going to get the same treatment. Not all of my photos are going to have something on them. You can see the photo of the soup in the top right corner and the photo of the flowers in my yard in the bottom left corner. Both have die cut pieces that were from the kits that I pulled from. So they had something that coordinated and went with the kits, but I don't have to put one of those on all of my photos. Instead, I'm doing this created embellishment cluster on 3 photos. So I picked 3 that were kind of evenly spaced across the spread. This one of my daughter in her dorm, well, I guess not dorm, her apartment. My cat in that box, and the fridge being fully stocked after we went grocery shopping after being away from the house for 3 weeks. Then I decided I needed something else. So what I did was I went into my chipboard stash and I pulled out these ampersand chipboards, which were from the And Story Kit. I still have quite a few of them, and that was such a fun story kit as basics. But I wanted to use a few of those pieces, so I ended up stacking one on top of each of those stacks of word phrase strips. I found 3 of them that coordinated with the colors of the products I'm using on this spread and stacked them on top of the word phrase strips. You can see how I'm doing that right here on the refrigerator one. And I really, really love how it came out, and I love that this was an opportunity to use some supplies from my stash. After I finish these, I go back into my chipboard organization and find a couple more pieces that I want to add onto the spread. One of my goals this year is to use up more of my products from my stash, not really this year, but just in general. And so I'm trying to push myself on most of these spreads to dig into my chipboard organization and pull out 1 or 2 pieces that I can use. So I had that heart and I really wanted to use it because I felt like as a heart, it kind of went with this spread, but it just didn't look good anywhere. So you saw me pull that out a couple times in this video and I decided against it. But instead I pulled out a few different chipboard pieces. And I put one on the photo of me with my new glasses, and I ended up putting one on the photo of me with that mirror. I really like looking for photos that have space on them where you can layer additional things. That photo of me with the mirror was originally actually a vertical photo. You can kind of tell if you see my phone in the picture that my phone is vertically oriented, and because I shared it on Instagram stories, but I cropped it to be a horizontal 4x6 because it gave me so much extra space to add that heart on there and to ultimately add a chipboard piece. I do end up finding one, I think in this section. Yes, that's the one I use, which is from probably a February Stories by the Month kit from a previous year, which is why it coordinates so well with this spread. And I'm just kind of making sure the adhesive's on there and adding it to the spread. Then I'm going to call this one done and slip everything into the pockets. I'm really happy with how this one came together. I think when you look at it, yes, it kind of looks like a February spread with all the hearts and the colors, but really hearts can go any time of the year. It doesn't really matter that this is a summertime spread. I feel like the colors work really well, and I really loved this as a jumping off point for my stories for this week where I was sick and not a lot. I guess a lot was happening, but there was a lot of like downtime too. So highlighting specific stories rather than saying, this is what happened every day worked really, really well for this week. Okay, so here's a look at that completed spread once I get all of these photos into the pocket. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Thanks. Bye.